Chapter 306. Excuse me, Galyahan? Shan waved her hand in front of Galyahan, who was standing tall. Only then did the focus return on his bright green eyes. Ah, yes, I have just arrived. Really? That's a relief. Shall we go eat now? Aren't we going to eat here? Galyahan tilted his head. They met at a restaurant around lunchtime, and he couldn't understand why she wanted to go somewhere else. As far as he knows, this Blue Wave was a restaurant with its own name. But Shan was determined. There's a good restaurant that I looked at separately. Let's go there. But Galyahan hesitated, glancing at the owner of the Blue Wave, who was still busy. But for a while, when Shan tugged on the hem of his clothes, Galyahan began to follow her. The place where they arrived was an alley quite far from the downtown area. A small restaurant was opening alone in the alley full of only houses. At a glance, the shabby restaurant that seemed to have been settled there for a long time was surprisingly crowded, as much as the Blue Wave. Oh, I'm hungry. Let's go in now. Shan, who had been holding Galyahan's sleeve while coming here, released her hand, said that, and went inside first. Galyahan, who had been glancing down at the hem that Shan was holding a while ago, looked around only then. Is there a place like this in Lombardy? It was Galyahan who had been wandering around the city of Lombardy in the front yard since he was old enough to get out of the mansion, so he thought he knew everything about the city. Arriving around the small alley, it was the first time even he had been here. Is it because of the delicious smell coming out from the inside, or because of the fact that he has discovered a new side of Lombardy? Galyahan also entered with a little excitement. Here it is, Galyahan. Shan, who took a seat by the window, waved at him. I ordered the food in advance. When I come here, I have to eat this too. It was difficult to look straight at Shan's smiling face, so Galyahan fixed his gaze somewhere on the table and nodded. Have you ever been here? No, I've never been up to this alley before. Succeeded, Shan said without hiding her joy. I did some research to find a really good restaurant. In fact, the Blue Wave food is really good, but I don't want to spend time at work until my day's off. Where do you work? Oh, I didn't tell you. I work in Blue Wave. I slept there too. In fact, it's been a while since I came to Lombardy, so I don't really have a place to stay. While saying so, the two eyes looking at the food that came out first on the table next to them sparkled beautifully. And since it's my first meal with my friend, I can take him anywhere, right? Oh, Galyan blinked at Shan's playful remark. Then he quietly replied back, if it's Shan, won't you make a friend who can eat together like this soon, even if it's not me? It was only the second time he met her face, but he could tell at a glance how bright and attractive she was. She seems to have no one in Lombardy right now, but soon others will recognize Shan's strengths. Obviously, it's a good thing for her, but Galyan frowned a little without realizing it. However, Shan, who interpreted his expression differently, asked carefully, perhaps, did I bother you, Galyan? What? No, it's not like that. He was so surprised, and the spoons and forks on the table clattered as he jumped. That's not what I meant at all. Shan is a good person, so you're going to make a lot of friends soon. As Galyan hurried to explain, Shan's face, which had been hardened for a moment, became warm again. That's a relief. Shan stroked her chest. Although she didn't show it on the outside, she was frankly very nervous. Wouldn't that be the case for anyone? It was a half-dangling spot asking to be her friend. But Gallihan wasn't just a friend. He was her future husband. No matter what happened in the distant future with him, Shan wanted to get to know Gallihan smoothly. And from what he has been doing so far, her future husband has never been an easy target. The unavoidable brief silence ended when the steaming stew was placed on the table with two bowls. Gallihan carefully picked up the spoon and tasted it. How is it? It's really delicious. Stew with plenty of meat was just Gallihan's taste, right? You have to eat all of this and eat dessert. Do they sell desserts too? Yes, the apple pie is really good, too. It's a dessert that Gallihan likes, apple pie that's moderately sour and moderately sweet. She knew he'd like it, but seeing his reaction right in front of her was another story. It was when Sean, who was so relieved, was about to make her first drink. How did you know? What? That I like apple pie. Oh, my mistake. That was also such a fatal mistake. She had seen him eating several pieces of apple pie alone through her precognitive dream. She couldn't even say that. A cold sweat ran down her back. She was so embarrassed that her head seemed to have hardened. Sean eventually had to pick up whatever came up and said it. Why, for some reason, it looks like that. Should I say that you like apple pie? Apple pie. My face looked like that? Poofed, white, handsome, and cute. People usually like apple pie. What the hell am I talking about? While talking, her eyes were dizzy. He could have thought I was a very strange nonsense person. Should I laugh a lot pretending to be kidding now? It was when Sean was so worried. Poofed. She lifted her head at the small sound that came from the seat in front of her. Galyahan? Galyahan was laughing. His shoulder was shaking slightly as he covered his mouth with one of his hands and struggled to contain his laughter. A face that likes apple pie. Where do you get that phrase? His round, slightly lowered eyes were folded neatly, and even his complexion, which had always been a little pale, turned red. It was a smile that seemed to be shining brightly. Shan watched that smile for a moment. Now I'm relieved. When she saw her handsome future husband's smiling face, she could feel her heart fluttering. But more than anything else, she was relieved. In the future, she saw briefly, Galihan was a person who had a lot of laughs, especially when he was in front of her. Shan put down the spoon she was holding in her hand and grabbed Galihan's hand. It was a very impulsive behavior. Shan, I'll make you laugh a lot in the future, Galihan, so that you can become a person who looks better with a smiling face than with a gloomy face later on. Oh, the food is going to get cold. Let's hurry up and eat. Shan patted the back of Gallian's hand one last time, and then took a big bite of the stew. Cough. When she heard a small cough and looked up, Gallian's face turned slightly red. The stew is a bit spicy. He lowered his head and added in a low voice, asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Gallihan got into the carriage, waiting for him at the appointed time. It was a familiar road home, but it was different today. Perhaps because he laughed and chatted about Lombardy all day with Sean, he felt more at ease than ever before. After spending a whole day like that, the two parted, promising to meet again tomorrow afternoon. A smile spread across Galliahan's face when he remembered Sean waving her hand at him a little while ago in front of the blue wave. But for a while, soon after, he fell into some serious dilemma. We are friends. See you tomorrow, friend. Friend. Each time Shan said those words, he flinched several times. He couldn't help it, and probably, I think I like Shan. His heart was flowing so quickly that the past, when his heart was more excited when he read good books and pictures than the opposite sex, was overshadowed. It was like falling into a person named Shan. Shan, in the quiet courage, Galiahan called her name aloud. Thump thump. His heart started flutter again just by speaking her name. At least to him, she can't be just a friend. Dalian opened the window and muted carefully, cooling his red face. If I get a little more greedy, I can't do it. A light sigh followed at the end of the words. Still, it wasn't very hopeless. They had a good time until the sunset, and they decided to meet again tomorrow, just in time for Shan's work to end. Galiahan sighed as he looked up at the sky where the stars had now begun to rise one by one. The night seemed to be very long today. We've arrived. With the sound of the coachman, the carriage stopped in front of the mansion. Galliahan, who had been walking all day, was moving his legs, which were a little stiff, and headed towards the room. Galliahan, until he hears a low, strict voice calling out to him, "Where did you go all day long?" It was Gallian's father, Lulak Lombardi. End of chapter 306. Chapter 307. Oh, Father. The excitement that had fluctuated just a moment ago was gone, and Gallian's face hardened. He was just standing with his hands on his back, but the energy that Lulak Lombardi naturally emitted suppressed the surroundings. A few years ago, after a long struggle for succession, Lulak, who inherited Lombardi's householder, was regarded as having seized power more meticulously than any other householder of the past. Galliahan, who was a teenager at the time, vividly remembered the political strife in the family that took place just before the succession of the householder position, and how perfectly his father, Lulak Lombardi, had ridden his rival brothers. Galliahan, who paused breathing for a moment as he recalled the memory of that time, barely answered, bowing his head. I went to get some fresh air. Until now, I lost track of time while walking in a place with a nice view. He was not old enough to be reprimanded for being late to go home, but Galliahan swallowed dry saliva at Lulak's stinging gaze. Galliahan, yes, father, it's good to enjoy a moment of freedom among the citizens of Lombardy. Flinch. Only then did Galliahan remember that he was wearing shabby commoner's attire. A stream of cold sweat seemed to flow down his back. As a member of Lombardy, it is important to know their lives well and to have affection for them, but Lulak put a heavy hand on Gallihan's shoulder. You need to know how to distinguish between what you want to rule and what you have in your heart. You know everything. Gallihan looked up his head and faced his father. Brown eyes, which seemed normal at first glance, had an irresistible power. I believe that I believe that you, Galliahan, will behave well on your own. Behave yourself. Realizing the meaning of the words, Gallian hurriedly tried to protest. But a large hand gripped his shoulder again. It meant that he would not talk about this anymore. In the end, Lulak, who saw Gallian's mouth close again, said with a half-satisfied smile, I have something to give you, so follow me. The back of his father, who turned around first and walked away, looked so huge, to the point where he can't go against it. Gallihan eventually followed Lulak into the Patriarch office. Perhaps the work had not been completed yet, and the documents were piled up here and there in the brightly lit office. Lulak, who was accustomed to passing through them, sat down, opened the drawer, and took out a fairly thick stock of papers. What's this? Gallihan asked as Lulak handed it over to him. This is a brief summary of the recent work at the top of Lombardy. If you read carefully, you will get a sense of how the top is operating. But I already told you, father, I don't want to work at the top. Is it you or Vij to say that you don't want to? Surprised by the sharp question, Galyahan was unable to answer in the end. Lulak, who looked at his youngest son with strict eyes for a while, swallowed a sigh. Among the four siblings, the first Shananet and the youngest Galyahan were the only ones who showed sprouts to inherit the householder position. However, since Shananet wanted to be faithful to her family after her marriage, she was in a situation where she had to put down her duties she was doing. Eventually, Lulak put his hopes on the one remaining Galyahan. But Galyahan was too weak. Galyahan was the only one who didn't know that even though he had the ability to quickly push his older brother Vij out of the succession competition if he made up his mind. Lulak wondered if Galyahan's personality would change a little after adulthood, but as the years passed, Galyahan only got intimidated more and more. Vij has been looking for you every day and being mean to you. Oh, did you know? Do you think there's something I don't know about in Lombardy? Gallian's face turned red when Lulak asked back. It was because the memory of giving a clumsy performance in front of his father yesterday was revived. It's different from last time. Now you have no choice. Gallihan opened his eyes wide. If it's you, you know what I mean. Gallihan nodded his head heavily. It meant that he would not give Vij time to intervene by taking away the right to choose. It was both compulsory and consideration for Gallihan. After watching his youngest son for a moment, Lulak said as he resumed his post householder job. So prepare your heart and come back on your own. Time can't be given very long. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. What the hell was that dream? As she cleared the table, the customer had just left. Sean tilted her head. She had a dream last night. It was the future for Galyahan. It wasn't there when she had a long dream in the village. Does it mean that the future has changed? In her dream, Galyahan was working. At first glance, surrounded by talented people. He looked busy, but at the same time, he looked very energetic. It was a very indifferent future from Galyahan she has seen so far. At that time, someone smiled at Shan and spoke loudly. Shan, I enjoyed the food today too. See you next time. They were regulars who came several times a week. Please go home safely. Shan greeted each other with a smile and looked around. After running around frantically for several hours, the shop was pretty quiet after lunchtime, and Shan found Galyahan at the window seat located at the corner of the shop. Galyahan, when did you come? It's been a while. Now is it the time to take a break, Shan? Galyahan replied with a small smile. Shan fluttered a little at that smile, took off her apron and sat down in front of him. It has already been 10 days since she started meeting and spending time with Galyahan every day. In the meantime, he visited the Blue Wave every day in time for Shan's break time and the end of work, and the two had become part of each other's daily lives. It was nice to see Gallihan's face every day, but there was one thing that bothered her. Shan didn't hide her dissatisfaction and looked around with a frown on her forehead. It was because the women at the table who were still there were glancing at Gallihan. Speechless, not sure what to worry about these days, Gallihan often stared blankly at a distant place like now, and his excellent appearance drew more people's attention. Shan narrowed her eyes and said, Gallihan, don't come here anymore. Shan, we'd better just meet outside. Then Galyahan's light green eyes shook anxiously. What's wrong, Shan? Did I disturb Shan? Have you ever been scolded because of me? No, that's not it. The owner of the Blue Wave didn't hate that Galyahan occupied one table every day. No, she rather liked it. Thanks to this, the number of customers in the shop has increased even more. There are so many people coming to see Galyahan. Everyone knows he's handsome. At Shan's small remark, Galyahan's face turned bright red in an instant. But this appearance was cute, so she could heard women giggling from afar. I can't kick the guests out. It was when Shan was thinking bluntly. I feel the same way. Galyahan looked straight at Shan with a red face and said, Do you know how many men can't take their eyes off Shan every day? Me? Yes, everyone won't even know where the stew goes because they're looking at the hard-working Shan, and sometimes when Shan smiles, it seems to shine brightly. Galyahan, who was pouring out his heart, suddenly stopped talking. Only then did he realize what he was saying. His white face is now like a pretty apple. In the opposite side, Shan, with a face as red as his, clapped his hands and asked, Even if I tell you not to come, you'll come, right? Nodding, Galyahan quickly nodded his head, not even meeting her eyes properly. It was a pretty strong expression of will. Then, please cover your face with something like a hat or hoodie. What do you think? Nodding, that even after the compromise was reached, the two reddened faces did not calm down easily. Friend, while they tied each other up with those vague words to see each other every day, the conversation they had a while ago was quite bold and crossed the line. Ahem, would you like to visit the backyard here? Shall we go? Galyahan, who hurriedly put down the price of food on the table, jumped up from his seat. The backyard of the inn, which often visited by guests and staff of the inn operating with the restaurant, was small but warm with good sunlight. It's a place where I put my mind at ease. Galyahan, who looked around, once said, Right, I also want to have a backyard like this in the future. It's a house with a lot of trees and flowers, so it feels comfortable and cozy. I think it suits Shan well. At Galyahan's praise, Shan smiled brightly and clapped her hands loudly. Oh, I forgot. What's wrong, Shan? I'm taking care of the trees and flowers here, but I forgot to water it. Shan hurriedly found a large bucket and filled it with water, and the moment she tried to lift it with all her might, I'll hold it. Where should I go? Gallihan asked, gently pushing Shan's hand away. Gallihan lifted the bucket, which she struggled to lift with her two hands with one hand. There was no sign of difficulty. Oh, you can give it to the tree over there first. Do you want me to hold it together? However, Gallihan shook his head. I'll do it, so just tell me how much. Shan will watering it. Speechless, behind Galyahan, who was willing to take the lead, Shan secretly clapped her hand again. After giving water to the trees and flowers, the last thing Shan pointed to was a small flower pot. Galyahan looked closely at it, placed in the sunny spot in the backyard. His eyes kept looking towards the delicate leaves or the very small flower buds. What's this plant's name, Shan? To Galyahan's question, Shan directly watered it and answered, Bomnia. It's called Bomnia flower. End of chapter 307. Chapter 308. It's a flower that I've never seen before. Bomnia. Its name is pretty too. Gallihan laughed as he rolled the name Bomnia several times in his mouth. I brought it with me when I left my hometown. It's a common wildflower that blooms there. Did you bring this all the way here? Yes, it wasn't that hard. But it is a very precious flower to me. I'm thinking of finding a place where it will grow well and planting it. Shan smiled as she said that. Hey, Shan, may I ask you a question? Gallihan's voice as he spoke his words was infinitely cautious. Of course, what are you curious about? Shan, why did you leave your hometown? He has been curious ever since he got to know her. Listening to the story, Shan's hometown seemed to be very south of the continent, but what was the reason for coming all the way to Lombardy from such a distant place? I'm sorry if this is too much of a question. You don't have to answer, Shan. Galyahan hurriedly added, there was something I could only do if I left the village. TN. To marry you, Gali. Shan answered Galyahan without hesitation. Weren't you afraid? Leaving behind familiar things and going somewhere you don't know at all. It must have been a huge challenge. I was afraid. Again, Shan's answer was as light as her smile. Still, there were things I had to do. I could do, and I wanted to do. Gallihan stared blankly at her as she spoke so calmly. It was because Shan, with a very small body, looked large. Gallihan, who had been hesitating for a while, opened his mouth with difficulty. Actually, there is a top run by my family. Top? Yes, but this time I was given the opportunity to work at the top. It's something to celebrate, Galyahan. Yes, but I don't know if I can do it well, Shan. I have to take a lot of responsibility. Shan, who was quietly listening to the story, suddenly remembered the dream she had last night. His appearance that was passionately working with many people, and with a face as lively as that figure, Galyahan said in front of her right now. But I'm going to try to be brave like Shan. She wanted to support Galyahan, who tried to stop hesitating and take a big step, until her eyes suddenly turned black. Flop. Several scenes crossed her head as the sound of the watering pot falling down. It was the future of herself and Galyahan that she saw when she had a long dream. However, unlike before, it was cloudy as if it was foggy. Shan realized instinctively Galyahan's future was changing. The decision he made now has created a big crossroads. If so, there was only one thing to do. She can change Gallian's choice now. Perhaps a single word like I think it would be better not to overdo it would solve the problem, but she couldn't do that. He finally got courage and she wanted to protect that happy face with redness like spring. Galyahan. Shan picked up the watering pot she had dropped for a while and smiled as if nothing had happened. I believe Galyahan will do a great job. Thank you, Shan. Turning back on Galyahan, who answered shyly, Shan secretly took a breath. There wasn't just one way for Galyahan to be happy, and he had the right to choose the path he took. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Galyahan became very busy. At first, he made frequent mistakes as he began to go to work at the top of Lombardy, but now, after a few months, he enjoyed working. It was partly because there was a great teacher and guide named Romasi Dillard, the top owner of Lombardy, but aside from that, Galyahan was quick to learn the job. Thanks to Galyahan, my work has decreased these days. Romasi Dillard spoke with his eyes as if he was looking at a well-grown disciple. If anyone hears it, they'll think it's real. Perhaps, Lord, don't say that. Galyahan was embarrassed, but Romasi Dillard shook his head. I'm not lying. It's Galyahan's strength that this work is delicate. It was the work of the top of Lombardy that touched a lot of money and moved a lot of people. No matter how busy you are, if you make several small mistakes, it's the profit at the top that disappears in an instant like sand escaping between your fingers. Galyahan's face turned red even more at the praise that followed. Of course, you still lack a lot of bold and active determination. I'll try, Tops Lord. While tapping Galyahan's shoulder, Romasi Dillard thought there was nothing he could do about it. It was Galyahan's nature to be thoughtful and fearful. Knowing this, he was specially interested in Galyahan among the four siblings from the Patriarch. I'll be happy to help. As Galyahan began to perform well at the top of Lombardy, more and more people were interested in Lombardy's succession structure. If this continues, it will only be a matter of time before people will gather under Galyahan. Oh, it's already time. Galyahan, who had been reading the documents as if to bury his nose, jumped up from his seat and put on a thin robe. Romasi Dillard and the top's employees who worked in the vicinity nodded their heads as if they were familiar with it. Despite his busy time, Galyahan went for a walk every few days. I'll be back. In order not to interfere with other people's work, Galyahan, who spoke in a small voice, left the top's building and quickly walked away. The destination was a secluded park located halfway between the Blue Wave and the top. When it came time to run out of breath, he could see Sean at the appointment place in advance. She closed her eyes and enjoyed the sun waiting for him. Galyahan's heart beat hard at that beautiful appearance. I believe Galyahan will do a great job. Sean is a kind of friendly person, so it could have been a word of encouragement that didn't mean much, but at least to Galyahan every word felt like a prophecy. Whenever he wanted to give up after starting his first job, he thought of Sean's smile and found courage. If I had a little more courage. Gallihan clenched his fist when the day comes when he can fully settle down at the top and be proud of himself. At that time, Gallihan blushed at the imagination that his heart was about to explode just by thinking about it. Oh, Gallihan, here it is. Shan, who found him standing tall at the entrance of the park, waved her hand loudly. Shan, Gallihan quickly walked over and sat down next to Shan. Have you been busy today? She asked with a voice as bright as the weather in early summer. Yes, a little bit in the morning. You said you're at the top of the business run by your family, so how about getting some help? Gallian's eyes fluttered at Shan's worried words. It was a guilt that he hadn't told her everything yet, although he knew his name was Gallian Lombardi, and he had to tell her that his father was the lord of this land. His mouth didn't fall off. My father's friend helped me a lot. That's a relief. The weather is hotter, so take care of your health. Yes, Shan. The corners of his mouth, which answered meekly, trembled with joy inevitably. He was not even a child, but he liked the words she was worried about. But for a while, I think I will inevitably be busy with the festival preparations. You said, you said there's a wedding for His Highness the Crown Prince, right? Galliahan nodded. Soon the Crown Prince Jovanes was scheduled to marry Rabini of the Angenes family. Accordingly, the emperor declared a week-long holiday throughout the empire and ordered a large festival to be held in the capital. When the guests of the restaurant gather, they are busy talking about the festival. I heard it's open for 3 days. That's right. Still, I think I will be able to take a breather when the festival starts. Galliahan, who was looking at Shan for a while, asked, Wouldn't you like to go to the festival with me, Shan? Good. Together. It was the time of Shan to answer, with a slightly red face. The image of someone passing by the park caught Gallian's eyes. He was an employee at the top of Lombardy who had a meeting in the same space a while ago. Sure enough, the employee looked toward Gallian and tilted his head. Shan, now, wait a minute. Gallian hid his head by putting the robe he was wearing hastily over Shan's head. It's pretty chilly because it's in the shade. It's early summer right now, Shan murmured, but Gallian was busy checking beyond the robe. Fortunately, the employee tilted his head once more and went his way. He thought he must have seen it wrong. Phew, without even exhaling a sigh of relief, Galliahan, who turned his head, hardened. It was because Shan's face was right in front of him. End of chapter 308. Chapter 309. He couldn't even breathe. His chest plummeted. With his dazed head, Gallian thought, I have to step back, but his body didn't listen. He seemed to have lost his soul to the green eyes he could see right in front of him. Also, Galliahan vaguely realized that she doesn't avoid himself. Shan sat still as he was, staring at Galliahan, who approached rudely. Blinking, he could hear her long eyelashes flapping. Gallihan approached her without realizing it. He wanted to kiss her. It was the only thought in his head. As he drew closer, he felt like he could feel her breath in and out of the sensitive sense that stood close. He was so engrossed in her sweetness. However, Galliahan, who found something in her clear eyes, stopped and stood tall. He was unscrupulous to approach a woman who had not formally allowed to date. Sorry. Galliahan hurriedly stepped back. It was a hot day, and I suddenly felt dizzy. The memory of saying that it was chilly because it was a shade just a while ago has already disappeared. However, there was a lot of self-criticism. His heart was like a chimney. Of course, he wanted to confess his feelings to her. However, he wanted to hit himself hard because he had not yet had the courage to do that, and he had black heart for a moment. Eventually, Gallihan sat as far away as possible, and he apologized once more. I'm sorry, Shan. Seeing that dazed look, Shan thought he was trying to kiss me, wasn't it? Apparently, it was that kind of atmosphere. So close. It's okay, Gallihan, because today is not the only day. It can be. It seems this man isn't ready for his heart yet. It's a little disappointing, but Shan pretended not to know, pretended to be worried about Gallihan, and even sent a hand fan. How have you been, Sean? Gallihan tried so hard to change the subject in an awkwardly awkward voice. It's just the same every day, nothing special. Ah, come to think of it, she has one piece of news for Gallihan. I think the owner of Blue Wave will change. Does it mean that Mrs. March is quitting the restaurant and inn? Yes, because she's old now. I think they are trying to sort things out when someone who lives there appears. I see. They said it was just like changing owners. At the end of Sean's words, a bitter smile flowed. Still, I think I will miss her a lot because she was the first to reach out to me, who was the first to come to Lombardy and had nowhere to go. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. After breaking up with Galia, Hanshan walked slowly. In the meantime, she has been thinking about whether there's anything she can give as a gift to Mrs. March. When she arrived in front of the Blue Wave, she saw a very large carriage standing in front of it. Is it a customer carriage? However, it was a carriage that looked too expensive for commoners who mainly visited the Blue Wave. Even after a busy time, the quiet restaurant was somewhat cluttered, unlike usual. Upon entering, Sean looked around and saw the figure of the owner, March. Mom March, the owner of the Blue Wave, who was always confident and did not hesitate to raise her voice even to customers, was politely bowing her head to someone. Who is it? She saw a man getting up from his seat as if he had just finished talking. He had brown hair and brown eyes, and had an ordinary appearance, but he had a deep, grumpy, and cold impression. But nonetheless, what caught his attention was his head to toe attire, as if he was a nobleman and his arrogant attitude as if he looked down on everyone. As the man drew closer, Shan, who was still standing at the doorway, greeted him with the same respect as Mrs. March. It was according to the imperial etiquette she had learned over the past few months. However, she could feel the gaze from the back of her head as she was looking down on the tip of her own toes. Stump. The man's footsteps stopped in front of Shan. Even so, he did not move for a long time. I guess you have something to ask me. Shan slowly straightened up. At the same time, the man's brown eyebrows wriggled unpleasantly. Oh, Sean exclaimed without realizing it. It was because the man's face looked familiar. Vij Lombardi, Vij, Callahan's older brother, was evident. Sean did not avoid Vij's gaze. She absolutely did not want to lose to this man. Spit. The situation, which continued as if it were a brief confrontation, ended with Vij spitting at Sean's feet and turning around. Only contempt for Sean remained in the place where Vij got on the huge carriage he had ridden and disappeared. Sean, are you here? Oh, Ma'am March. Shan smiled awkwardly, pulling the corners of her mouth as if to understand her heart. Marge's warm hands patted her shoulders. Shan, we don't have any customers. Shall we have a cup of tea? Drinking tea together, it had never happened since several months had passed since Shan started working in the Blue Wave, where there was always a pile of work to do. After a while, a cup of tea was placed in front of Shan and Marge. It was a rough cup, but the scent that touched the tip of the nose was fragrant. A few times, Marge opened her mouth with difficulty as she swallowed steaming tea instead of talking. In fact, the contract ended today. Oh, it was so unfortunate. Mrs. March is making her retirement safely, so it's something she should celebrate together. So Shan couldn't hide her regret, but contrary to what I said at first, it looks like another building will be built on this site. What? He said he was going to tear down the building altogether. Mrs. Marge's wrinkled hand touched the apron she took off on the table. As Shan looked at those rough hands, she realized what Mrs. March was trying to say. I'll have to look other places. Suddenly lost her place to stay in her job. I'm ashamed of myself because he paid a lot of money. I had no choice but to. I'm sorry, Shan. No, ma'am. Shan took Marge's hand, which still rested on her apron. You don't have to be sorry at all. It was natural to make a deal that would pay a better price. This is where ma'am poured her whole life. Why are you apologizing to me when you are getting paid for that value? Shan gave more strength to her clasped hands. Thank you, ma'am. Shan, thanks to that, I was able to adapt well to Lombardy. It's all thanks to ma'am. She smiled brighter on purpose, trying to ease Marge's mind even a little. It's a place to stay and work. I'll find it soon. Thank you for understanding, Sean. Marge gently wiped Sean's hand on the back of her hand. By the way, do I have to empty the shop from tomorrow? Oh my, no, that can't happen. We have manners for our regulars, and we decided to give them an end for 10 days. 10 days, it was not enough time to find a new place to live and work. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. We have arrived at the mansion. Gallihan raised his tired body at the coachman's voice and got off the carriage. Due to the lack of preparation for the festival, he was also responsible for logistics of the wedding part of Grand Prince Jovain's a few days ago, and every day continued. I want to go to bed and sleep. There was only one thought in Gallihan's head. It was already late at night, and there were quiet footsteps approaching Gallihan, who had entered the dimly lit hallway. Mr. Gallihan, Mr. Vij is calling you. My brother. He was tired enough to drag his feet on the floor, but he couldn't help it. If he ignored Vij's call, something annoying would have happened again. I'm going. Gallian headed to Vij's residence. He went around late. As soon as he arrived at the drawing room, Vij frowned at Gallihan. In recent years, Gallihan's position has been growing. That cowered Gallihan as Lombardi's successor. Lombardi's successor. No way. Fortunately, Vij knew how to cut off such Gallihan sprout at once. He seemed busy these days. Yes, the top is probably. Yeah, I guess so, because I'm short of top work beyond your place. Vij twisted his thin lips. To have a relationship with a lowly thing hidden in the inn. End of chapter 309. Chapter 310. Stopping, Galyahan, who was washing his face dry as if tired, stopped moving. Vij, who became even more elated at such a reaction, laughed. She was living there like a parasite, but what should I do? The rat hole is now owned by Lombardi. That lowly thing will have to wander around like a wanderer in search of a place to stay. The sound of a clicking tongue echoed through the drawing room. Galyahan, Galyahan, you are so foolish. Pretending to be a brother who cares about his younger brother, Vij got up from his seat and approached Galyahan one step at a time. It's not that I'm trying to get close to the wandering girl just to have fun with blacked up personality, but at least I'm living with like I would care. I would take care of a dog I picked up on the street. It was so obvious, contrary to how he and Laurels fell in love with hunting from a young age. Gallian cried and leaned back, saying he felt sorry for the animals. In order to become a powerful owner of the family, Gallian's nature was wrong. If you were a little smart and behaved properly, you would have been in a lot of trouble. Well, thanks to that, I was able to let the people of my family know that you have a relationship with that lowly girl. I am very grateful, Gallian. Are you saying that you're going to spread the rumor? Why, you seem to be afraid of rumors too. Vij giggled. Just as Sister Shannonette brought Vestian, I don't know if Shan would be the daughter of a declining aristocratic family. When Shan's green eyes, who looked straight at him without knowing the subject, came to mind, Vij's face looked fishy. A wanderer who doesn't know where or how rolled herself. Vij deliberately leaned toward Gallihan so that he could hear it well. It's dirty. Gallihan just kept his head down. He must have been frightened. He really liked the reaction of his brother like that. If he got down on his knees and prayed with his hands together, he thought that he might reconsider spreading rumors. Of course, he had no intention of wasting this good opportunity to make Gallihan's name disappear at once for the sake of such pleasure. Older brother. Sure enough, Gallian slowly began to lower his hand that covered his face. Soon after, Vij was very excited to see his frightening appearance from beyond. However, I am so lucky. Gallian's face with his head up was expressionless. The shadow of his hand lifted and the revealed green eyes gleamed smoothly in the light of the room. My brother was a little intelligent person. I wouldn't have come forward to use clumsy methods such rumors. What? If I had been my brother, I would rather ask me to run away from Lombardy, far away so that my father will never find me. Beach's shoulders flinched. You blew up a good opportunity to get me out of your way. I can't help it. The eldest son of Lombardy is not very smart. You punk. Unlike the momentum of rushing in and grabbing him by the collar at any moment, Beach could not take a step away from his seat. It was difficult to make eye contact with the cold Gallihan. Instead, Beach tried to sarcastically pretend nothing happened. Humph, what if the fact that you are close to the lowly girl gets to father's ears? Do you think it will still be there? No matter how much he pretend not to be afraid of rumors, in reality he won't. Vij thought so. However, Gallian's expressionless face overlooked him with a hint of ridicule at first glance. Didn't you say that Lombardi bought the Blue Wave? Yeah, I bought it myself. Who manages the real estate in Lombardy? The buildings around it are going to be Lombardi's sooner or later. Then who was the one who ordered you to do that? Well, it was Lulak Lombardi, his father and family owner. There's no way that father doesn't know what you know. As if it wasn't even worth talking to, Gallihan turned around, leaving behind Vij, who was babbling like a goldfish, and he spoke quietly while holding the doorknob in the drawing room. Never talk about Sean like that again, please. Apparently, he said please, but why does it sound like a command? In the end, Vij, who was left alone, stood in the drawing room for a long time with a sullen look. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. I should just get up. Shan, who had not slept all night, woke up from the bed with a tired face. She had a lot of thoughts, so it was inevitable to lose sleep. In the end, Shan, who sat down on the bed, murmured as she looked up at the twilight dawn, "Is it right to just go back to the village?" She came a long way with the determination to meet Galyahan and live the future the dream shower showed her. The person she met with such difficulty was a kinder and more lovable person than she had seen in her dreams. Naturally, Sean fell in love with him, and she could tell that Gallihan would feel the same way as herself. But apart from that, Sean was getting more and more depressed because Gallihan is someone who can be happy enough without me. Feeling particularly chilly in the still dark room, Sean crouched down and murmured once more, "Should I just go back?" After staring out the window for a while, Shan got up. She wanted to walk a little. Squeak. Shan, squeak. Shan's visit opened with a small noise. Galyahan, at her call, the man who was crouching in the hallway in the same shape as Shan was sitting a while ago, raised his head. Are you up, Shan? There was a tired look on his face that he couldn't hide while he greeted her. What? Were you waiting for me? Since when? It hasn't been long. Lies. Shan stared at Galyahan for a moment with her squinted eyes, then grabbed his arm and raised him up. First, come inside and talk. Yes, the door closed again, and in the quiet room, Shan asked again, what happened? If you had something to say urgently, but you wouldn't knock. Because Shan is sleeping, Gallihan answered meekly. I don't want to disturb Shan's sleep, but I really wanted to say something. What do you want to say? What is it? That's what I'm saying, Gallihan said while looking at Shan with deep eyes. Don't go, Shan. What do you mean? He heard she has to leave Blue Wave just in case she wanted to go back to her hometown. Gallihan carefully held Shan's one hand. Don't go, Gallihan. If you don't go, will you? Gallihan's big eyes, which had always had a friendly light, were full of fear. It was a fear that he might not see Shan again, that he might lose her. Galyahan. Yes, Shan. Do you need me? Green eyes that resembled each other suddenly met. Yes, really? I can't do anything without Shan now. Galyahan gave a little more strength to the hand he was holding. Shan moved her finger a few times in his big hand and answered, Okay, I won't go. Really? Yes, I'll be by Galyahan's side. Ah, Galyahan's white face spread the joy of relief. If Galyahan wants to, I will be here, and Shan smiled brightly. Actually, I don't want to leave Lombardy either. It was when she answered like that. With the feeling of being dragged, a solid arm hugged Shan. I have something I want to say to Shan, but I'm not ready right now. Galyahan said, hugging Shan with more force on both arms. Can you wait a little bit? In that reassuring embrace, Shan closed her eyes and smiled. Instead of the chill of the dawn, Galyahan's body temperature seeped into her body. As much as you want, Galyahan. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. You did a great job, Mr. Galyahan, Romasi Dillard said with a smile. Romasi Dillard's eyes were dizzy when there was a big problem arose at the top while preparing for the Crown Prince's wedding and festival. His legs were shaking because he thought he might end up tarnishing Lombardy's name. However, Gallian solved the problem safely with the way he thought of it momentarily, and tomorrow was finally the wedding day of the Crown Prince. If it wasn't for Mr. Galliahan, what would have happened? I hate to even think about it. I didn't do it alone. That's an exaggerated compliment, Top's Lord. Even in front of the sparkling eyes of Ramasi Dillard and the top staff, Galyahan only humbly said so. Excessive humility is rather disrespectful, Galyahan. Everyone's attention was drawn to the voice entering the top office door. Romasi Dillard welcomed the familiar face with a rare smile and quickly bowed to greet him. Patriarch, what brings you here? Translator's note, readers, I've just started translating new novel, Becoming the Villain's Family. If you like it, you can find it on the story list of the same account page. End of chapter 310.